is a special edition of NBC 10 at Issue with Philadelphia Independent mayoral candidate Wali Diop.
And the special edition of NBC 10 at Issue continues. I'm Steve Highsmith, and with me, candidate for mayor Wali Diop. Let's get right to a question from a viewer. Ruby from South Philadelphia asks, how is your position different than Mayor Nutter on creating meaningful employment and alleviating poverty in the black community?
Well, my position is different because I actually have a position. It's interesting because, the federal government came out with a recent statistic, Labor Department in particular, saying that the rate of unemployment for black teenagers rose from last year at 36% to this year at a little bit over 48%. That's a drastic increase. At the same time, there's a situation where the question of how to address poverty and hunger, the city of Philadelphia having the second highest child hunger rate in the country. These are real issues that have up until now come unaddressed. But I do have a program, for example, an urban agricultural program that I actually held a town hall meeting to lay out in a concrete way of how the $3 million at the time when the youth curfew was a weekend phenomenon using $56,000 per week. And I said, look, with $3 million, $56,000 per weekend, you can actually employ over 250 students of the Philadelphia School District. You can transform over 40 empty lots in the city of Philadelphia into community gardens, providing a way to feed the entire community that surrounds those gardens. That's just one example, and there are many others within the existing budget parameters that we have right now.
Obviously, you've been calling for a number of years for restructuring and a reprioritizing of how tax dollars are spent and how people who are in lower income groups, poorly educated people, are given better chances at life.
Yes.
Fair enough to say that?
Yes.
You were doing this same kind of protest at City Council. We'll take a look at one piece of video in 2009
yes.
in March, and you were holding up a sign. A civil affairs officer comes up to you. And why don't you explain what you were thinking at this point? You saw him come up to you, start to move the sign, and he eventually will put his hand on your throat.
Well, my initial thought, this is a defining moment in the question of free speech in the city of Philadelphia and in this country. As you can see, I was attacked.
You did push back a little bit there. You had your hand or arm that you waved down. You did take a couple steps forward. You did push back. Mm-hmm. And is it fair to say that objectively, at that point, you were resisting arrest?
I think the question is it fair to say the police had a right to attack me for holding up a sign? And the answer is no. And to answer your first question, my initial thought when I think about that particular incident is that it is a defining moment in the question of free speech in this city and in this country, where an activist, a grassroots activist, not a politician, but someone who has been on the front lines in the struggle for real economic and social justice in this city, goes into a city council meeting, and not with the benefit of a big media budget, but only with the sign saying, "Stop the war on the black community," brutally attacked by the police in the presence of other demonstrators, many of whom were white liberals, labor unions, etc. But I was the one that was targeted.
Didn't that sign say, "Throw Nutter in the gutter"?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, that's kind of violent imagery.
It said, "Throw Nutter in the gutter, stop the war in the African community." And it also said $1 billion for jobs and businesses for the African community, not police containment.
Did you feel that you were disrupting City Council prior to this incident?
Well, that was my intent. I definitely did not want the City Council meeting to proceed without the intervention from the voice of the people.
Does City Council have a right at some point to be able to say, we can't get business done if you can't be quiet, we're going to have to remove you or anyone else?
Of course, but the question was not of me making it impossible for the City Council meeting to go forward.
So, in other words, this played out. You were convicted and given 2 years probation, correct?
Correct.
Is that probation up?
No, it's still going on.
It's still going on. And you were given a fine. How's the fine paying going?
The fine paying is going fine,
even though
the fine is, of course not. Even though the fine is a form of theft, what's the word, blackmail or extortion. I totally condemn and reject the notion that I owe this city money for, and when in fact I was the one that was attacked by the police. In fact, I would say that the Philadelphia court system owes me and tens of thousands of other people who have been railroaded by the system.
You ever thought about filing a lawsuit? Because some people, I'm not not making a judgment here. I'm raising an issue. Well, look at that tape, and that's all we're showing right now at this point. You know, someone may allege something happened before or after. But if we're showing that, it doesn't look like aggravated assault. It looks like there's a confrontation that obviously took place.
I mean, I would have to say I was definitely assaulted in an aggravated manner by the police.
I'm talking about you were convicted of aggravated assault, correct?
Right.
Yeah, but do you feel that you were exercising that kind of violence, whether it was justified or in retaliation against a police officer?
Of course not.
All right. And you fought it and lost?
Correct.
And do you plan to pursue this any further, either a civil suit or anything else?
I think the results.
Is this proof of what you think is wrong with the system? Is that how you're looking at it?
Oh, yes.
All right. More to come, including the Uhuru movement, as Wali Diop Rahman sees it ahead on NBC 10 at Issue. Stay tuned.
You're watching the special edition of NBC 10 at Issue.